Welcome to another episode of Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, where certified financial planner Lauren Sherman shares thoughts on having a healthy mind, body, and spirit, an abundance of wealth inside portfolios and out, and lessons learned from clients and mentors over the years.
Welcome in for another Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement. Today we have a very special guest, golf professional Eric Peyton. I'm excited to interview Eric, not just for the benefit of everyone listening, but I may have a self-interest with this topic as I am an avid golfer myself. And as any golfer knows, the sport can be a roller coaster of ups and downs. One day you have it all figured out, and the next, you can't hit a decent shot to save your life. I don't know if one conversation with Eric will turn around your game, but for anyone who is already a golfer or aspiring to play more in retirement, I think Eric can point us in the right direction, and I'm sure you'll leave the conversation with some great tips. Eric grew up playing golf in central Iowa and attended Urbandale High School, where he competed on the golf team all 4 years. After graduation, he enrolled in the Professional Golf Management degree program at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. While there, he turned professional and started competing and teaching the game. After graduation, Eric started working as an assistant golf professional at golf courses all around the Midwest, including Wakanda, Glen Oaks, Omaha Country Club, and Eagle Vale Golf Club. Most recently, he was a pro at Prairie Dunes Country Club, a top 25 course in the United States. After leaving Prairie Dunes, Eric moved back to Des Moines and opened Eric Peyton Golf. He now teaches indoor golf lessons at Broheim's Indoor Golf and Pub in Waukee and X Golf in West Des Moines. In addition, for anyone listening who does not live in Iowa, Eric also teaches lessons online with the Skillest app. If you'd like to check out Eric's availability for lessons, you can find that linked in the show notes. As a writer, Eric has been featured in a variety of golf publications, including Golficity, The Left Rough, and Club Life magazine. Finally, Eric also launched a golf podcast called The Looper Podcast, where those he interviews share interesting golf stories and experiences. As if it's not obvious from his introduction, Eric has a passion for helping more people love the game of golf. One more note before we jump into the conversation. I purposely named this podcast Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement because I wanted the name to convey that we would be covering a wide range of topics. We weren't going to stick with only the technical conversations. For example, how and when to do a Roth conversion, what your investment pie chart should look like, and so on. Instead, my goal is to provide retirees with as much value as I can. Usually our topics will fall under the wealthy category of healthy, wealthy, and wise, but sometimes they may fall into the healthy or wise categories. After working with retirees dating all the way back to 2006, I found that many retirees pick up new hobbies as they enter that new phase of their life. All of a sudden, retirees have free time that wasn't there during their working years. Whether they pick up sports like golf or pickleball, hobbies like biking or aviation, or indulge in fine wines or high-end coffee, I think these are all fun topics to explore, and we will sprinkle these in throughout our more common finance-related episodes. On top of that, now that this show has been around for a couple of years, I've been getting a lot more feedback from listeners. And what many of you are telling me is that the finance-related topics are great, but there are a lot of other decisions or even challenges that you're facing that have nothing to do with an investment portfolio. I thought that was worth a quick mention because this will likely feel like a detour from previous episodes, but my mission remains the same, which is to continually provide value for retirees and those preparing to retire. I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I look forward to hearing your feedback as well as any new ideas that we can tackle with future episodes. Without further ado, let's bring in golf professional Eric Peyton for today's conversation. Eric, welcome in, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I shared a little bit of your background already in the intro, but do you mind telling our audience a little bit about what life looks like on the day-to-day for you?
Yeah, so I actually work full time at a Lutheran church, and the golf pro gig is kind of a side job for me. I was a club pro at a bunch of private courses around the Midwest for about 10 years. And so now, as I transitioned into more ministry as my full-time job, I kind of kept the side gig where I teach at two different indoor locations, simulators, if you're familiar with those. And then I also do some lessons online, which is really kind of a new technology that's been fun to use.
Yeah, the online, everybody's been getting used to that world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the nice things from COVID that we all figured out how to do this.
Right. So just to take a step back, how did you first get into golf?
So I first started playing when I was little. I was probably 6 or 7. My parents were not big golfers, but I do remember doing some little junior golf here and there. I didn't really get into it much. I was more of a baseball player, soccer player, basketball player. My family's a big baseball family, and so that was kind of my main sport. But once I got into kind of late middle school, early high school, I got into a new group of friends, and a bunch of them were golfers, and so I just met them on the golf course because it was in the neighborhood, and seemed to pick it up fairly quickly. I hadn't played very much in the 10 years prior or whatever, but I feel like I kind of got the hang of it fairly quickly, and it just took off from there. And it quickly replaced my other sports. By the time I got into high school, I was focusing solely on golf.
That was when you started to see that was something you were much better at than the other sports?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely saw that there was more of a path to actually competing, because I'm a fairly competitive person. In those other sports, like, it was fun, but I wasn't winning anything. So that's why I kind of stuck with golf.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's always a debate with people who have kids coming up through school is, do I put them in everything or do they focus on just one thing? I don't know. It seems that it works out well when they try a little bit of everything until they find maybe where they're excelling. And it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah. I liked playing everything, but I'm glad with my decision, especially later in life where you're not going on the weekends and playing baseball. You're not doing those sorts of team sports as much. And so later in life, golf is a nice thing that I'm glad I have that foundation from specifically high school to kind of build off of and go back to. Even when I can't play very much, at least it's a little bit more like riding a bike to me, where, I have a lot of students who are picking it up later in life. And that's a little bit more challenging because you don't have as much time to invest in it. But that's not to say it's not possible, but I'm glad that I did select golf instead of any of those other sports that I still love.
Right. It's definitely a great lifetime sport.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically looking at what a lesson looks like, can you share some more detail of what that exactly looks like with you?
Yeah. So we start every lesson with a student's struggles and their goals. What are they currently experiencing? What do they want when they leave the first lesson, which a lesson is normally about an hour long. So when they leave, I want to know what they want to see fixed the quickest. And then also where are they shooting towards? I've got some students who want to play in college. I've got some students who just don't want to embarrass themselves on the course. They want to have more fun, whatever it is. Consistency is always a word that comes up. So those are the main two things that we focus on at first, the struggles and the goals. And then in the first lesson, we obviously want to address the struggles first because it's the most immediate thing that's happening, the thing that's keeping people back. And I would say most of the time in an hour lesson, we can turn someone around and get that main struggle straightened out a little bit. And then once we've done that, start thinking like long term, how do we get to where that person's goal is? And so we spend a little time just warming up. Oftentimes look at their grip. That's a big thing. I think a lot of people don't even realize the importance of their grip in the golf swing. And then just doing a little video. I do some video analysis both for the in-person and online lessons so we can kind of keep track of where a student has been. So I've got some kind of a database of my students' previous lessons so we can go back the next time and say, where were you and how are you progressing towards your goal?
And there's a million different things you can, I guess, measure when you're doing that. So you have to be probably a little careful. I'm imagining that you don't get overwhelmed with the numbers and the analytics of it and you still keep it within the feel of a golf swing.
Yeah. One of the nice things about the modern simulators, the indoor kind of move that golf's taking, is that you do get a lot of instant data. Normal driving range, you're not going to get even the exact distance that you hit it. So that's a nice thing to have. You can get the spin rates, the face angle, the smash factor, the swing speed, all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I try not to focus on it too much because I feel like there's a lot of ways that a person can swing a golf club, and we want to kind of work within a student what they're doing well in order to create the best swing for them. Now, if we really kind of get caught up on and something isn't working, something we can't fix right away, digging into the numbers a little bit more and seeing what's actually happening can be really helpful as well. So that's been a really helpful shift in teaching the game, not only with video but with data. And so that's nice to do that. Plus, having the option to do it year round as well. You can be, here in Iowa, our season's a little bit shorter than a lot of places, so you can get all that stuff all year round and don't have to take any time off to, regress a little bit.
Yeah, I think it helps having someone like you to analyze or maybe be a little bit of the what's important within all of these numbers sort of barometer. You need that middle person almost in some ways, because anyone who's a golfer who's listening right now has probably been out there and had 5 different swing thoughts in their head as they're trying to make a swing. And I think everybody knows that doesn't work out very well. Is that pretty accurate? Is that you're trying to keep it simple as possible?
Yeah, I kind of think of it as the pre-swing setup thoughts and then the in-swing thoughts. And so you can have as many pre-swing stuff as you want, because you don't have to remember those. It's kind of set it and forget it. Like if you're talking about your grip, you put it on a certain way, you set it, you forget it. But in the swing, I tell a student, I don't want you to have more than 2 swing thoughts, 2 at max, preferably 1, because once you get too many in your head, you can't do them all. So if you have 3, 4, 5, you're probably going to execute 0 of those rather than even 1. So yeah, keeping it as simple as possible and allowing your practice and your repetition and your muscle memory to kind of take over.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you share a couple of your biggest success stories from students that have been taking lessons with you?
I think the biggest success stories I've had are ones where students come with an injury to overcome. I think about a couple recently who, used to play a lot of golf, play a lot of good golf, and then they got hurt in some way. I feel like I have a lot of shoulder injuries I've heard of, wrist injuries, things where students are no longer able to do what they used to do, or even do things, quote unquote, by the book. They can't do the normal moves that teachers are teaching. And so they have to work within the framework of what their body allows them to do. And there are ways to do that. That's where you get to kind of be creative. And I think those are fun because you can take a student who's not having fun anymore and kind of feels like they don't have a lot of hope because their body's just not letting them do what they think they need to do. And we can create a new swing for them that works for them. And that, so those are always fun. It's always fun to have either high schoolers or college students who, typically high schoolers, that want to make their team or want to make a college team. Those are fun as well. But I would say the biggest thing is taking someone who's injured and helping them have fun again.
Yeah, that's a cool concept. It sounds like that's maybe a little bit more of the art of it versus the science, where you have to, if someone physically can't turn, the quote unquote science of the swing, you have to create a little bit of art there.
Right.
And I'm saying student, but, when I say student, it makes me think of someone younger, but I imagine you're coaching people of all ages. Is there even people into their retirement that are taking up a hobby, for example?
Yep. I've got a lot of people in retirement. I've got a lot of working professionals. Got some high schoolers as well, some college students. But yeah, I've pretty much everything of all ages. My oldest son is 5, and he's just starting to get into golf. I'm trying to help him to love the game rather than teach him the game, right? And so I think kids that are a little too, maybe under either 7 or 8 is probably just let them go have fun. And so we don't have a lot that are young players, but everything in between we do.
So that leads a little bit into our next question would be, are lessons perhaps not important for certain people, or can lessons help anyone?
Yeah, I get kind of with the who it's not for, and not that it can't be for young people, but really young kids. I always say, I want them to love the game first before they, learn how to put their hands on the club correctly. Kids, from my experience, they have a lot of just natural ability to figure it out. And so if you can make it fun, if you can just bring them out on the course, have some music playing, play games with them, and not necessarily play golf as it is, that can help them get started. But I do have some students that are very young that just have the interest in learning. But I would say that's more rare than the opposite. So that would be something I would say be careful with kids. Just let them have fun. Don't force them into lessons. And then also, I think everyone can benefit from lessons, but also lessons aren't necessarily like going to school, right? It's not something you necessarily do every day. You want to go to a lesson, get some information, and then go practice it, play with it on your own, learn to break it a little bit before you come back and get new lessons and new information. I've had students come to me that say, I want to take 5 lessons and I want to do it every day for a week and then move on. And we don't tend to learn that way. You learn a lot of information right away. And then 3 months after that week of lessons, you're going to have forgotten everything. And so if you spread them out a little bit more, that's a little easier to learn and to create a swing that lasts. So other than that, I think anyone can benefit a little bit from lessons.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I've probably been guilty of that, where I go out to the driving range and just pound a bunch of balls at the driving range, start feeling pretty good about my swing, and then you go out to the golf course and sometimes your old habits, they creep right back in. You see the hole and you don't have the same feel that you do on the driving range.
Yep, definitely.
What are a couple of the most common mistakes that amateurs make where they have a higher handicap? And just for handicap, if you're not a golfer, just explaining that that's someone, if you have a 1 or a 2 handicap, you're a really good golfer. If you have a 10 or a 20, you're not as good, the higher it goes. So someone on the higher handicap end of the spectrum, what are some of the most common mistakes that they might make?
So I see a lot of higher handicaps with a lot of tension in their arms. Like these sports I was talking about earlier, the baseball, the football, those sports where they're very powerful sports. We tend to find that our power comes from our arms a lot. And in golf, that's not the case. Tension in the arms is not necessarily a good thing. You want to create power with your torso and with the length of your swing, so the flexibility of your swing. And tense arms are not flexible, and they tend to travel away from you rather than stay in close, and you want arms that stay in close. And so that a lot of times creates a swing that kind of comes over the top. So if you were to imagine hitting into a baseball field, swinging over the top would be swinging away from your body, kind of in towards left center field for a right-handed golfer, or towards the shortstop. And that oftentimes creates a big slice. A lot of people struggle with a slice, the ball that kind of starts a little left and then goes right for a right-handed golfer. Okay.
My parents live on the right side of a golf course that's maybe about a 280, 290 yard hole. So they know all about the slice. A lot of golf balls end up in their yard.
Yeah, I bet.
So on the other end of the spectrum, you said the tighter arms is a big one for higher handicap. What about for lower handicap golfers who are pretty good? What are is there a commonality between maybe where they're losing some shots?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that becomes when they're swinging too hard or getting too aggressive. I struggle with this as well. Once you know you can hit a club a certain length, sometimes, pride and ego come in and you try to power up on one rather than toning it back a little bit and just hitting the center of the face easier. Or, if you've got a pin that's tucked over on the right, maybe you aim straight at it and then you miss a little bit and you're missing the green. You're trying to get up and down from a difficult spot. So you maybe trust your skill a little too much. I used to be a pro at a place that was it's a nice course. And it hosted the Big 12 championships for a little while. Actually, it's doing that right now, I guess. And one of the guys who set the course record years ago was Charles Howell. And after the round, or the coach had talked with their team about how to approach it. And he said, just aim for the center of every green. Don't go after any pin. and they won it by a lot, and he shot the course record. So sometimes just playing it safe is a smart way to go and not trying to attack pins. And that's, I think, where some lower handicap golfers can kind of get stuck.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking, I'm envisioning a pin tucked by the water, and there's all sorts of room where you can hit it into the center of the green. But some of that is the fun of being out there and golfing. And it's like, I know it's a lower percentage shot, but you want to give it a try. So
yeah, it's always great when you can pull one of those off.
Yeah. So it's a little double-edged sword there, because if you're truly out there just trying to enjoy yourself, maybe you do fire at some of those pins. But if you're trying to really improve your score, maybe that's where the center of the green advice would make a lot more sense.
Yep, definitely.
So this might be a silly question, but with all of that said, what would you say is the best way to improve your score and lower your handicap?
I always tell people the best way, the fastest way to drop scores is with pitching and lag putting. Pitching, kind of those shots where you have to take something off. You're not hitting it full, but you're not rolling it on the ground the whole way. So the 50-yard shot, 60-yard shot, if you can get up and down or give yourself a chance at getting up and down from there, that's huge and can really drop your scores. And it's a shot that is fairly easy to do, but a lot of people don't know how to do it correctly. And then same thing with lag putting. You think about how many times you face a putt of over 20, 25 feet and what your sense is standing over that ball. Do you feel confident you're going to two putt, or you a little scared that you're going to three putt it? And shaving one putt there is the same as, it's better than, statistically, it's better than, if you hit a huge drive in the fairway or a huge drive just, in the first cut of rough. You're not saving a shot there, but you're saving a full shot, which is huge in the long run on lag putting. So that'd be my biggest encouragement to people who want to drop it quickly. And plus, we don't practice those things very much. A lot of times we go to the range, we pound driver, pound irons, and then we go play some golf. So that's, I think a lot of people forget about it.
Yeah, it makes sense that those are the shots that we struggle with when we're not practicing them very often. I think I actually just listened we were talking about this before we hit record. I just listened to your own podcast that you host about lag putting, and has some great tips in that. So I believe that is called The Looper. Is that right?
Yep. The Looper podcast started out by interviewing interesting people in golf, and just kind of started a new series on teaching. So some easy things people can do to improve their own game. Yeah, like you said, we just did a lag putting one, and then actually the second one coming out in a couple weeks is on pitching. So those two things I thought important enough to hit right away.
Yeah, perfect timing. We'll be sure to link that in the show notes for everyone that wants to check that out too. So my next question was about putting. Maybe you already addressed this a little bit, of some of the key points to becoming a good or even great putter. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that regarding putting?
Yeah, the three big things I always think about is on the longer putts, having people view the putt from the side. In general, people have very poor depth perception, and we judge the distance of a long putt oftentimes just by standing behind the ball and looking at the hole. But if you can make a triangle with your body, the ball, and the hole, you can see the length of the putt easier in front of you. Paying really close attention to the break in the final third, because that's when the ball is slowing down and more affected by the undulation of the green. You don't have to really worry about the early parts, because the ball's going a lot faster and it's just going to go straight for the most part. And then spending some time on the practice green beforehand to kind of get a baseline of what the speed's like that day, because no green is the same. And so if you can get somewhat, especially if it's a course that you don't play really often, if you can figure out what the green speed is, that's huge. There's a lot of statistics out there that have found that golfers of all skill levels are most likely to three putt early in the round. So the likelihood of you three putting is highest on the first hole and lowest on the 18th hole, because you start to learn what the speed's like. So if you can minimize that by figuring out on the practice green, that's really helpful as well.
I think that people often say that the first few holes of the course, it's like, oh, these are the really tough holes. But in my mind, maybe that's more so just a matter of getting a feel for the course and loosening up and things like that, versus the actual difficulty of the hole.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And once again, I was telling you before we hit record, I had a chance to play some golf down in Florida at that course called Stream Song. And that was a different experience with having a caddy where a caddy was required in your group. And that was a different experience for myself. And they really look at the course and the shot and the approach just so much different than your average golfer. And they're, and walking around the green, getting a feel for it, standing on the side with their feet to kind of feel the break, just looking at it through a whole different lens than, I was going to say you or I, but maybe just myself would have.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Our next question might be a little bit tough to answer since our audience can't see you, but do you have any stretches that really help before getting out there and playing around?
Well, the more you can stretch your torso and your shoulders, I think that's helpful. A lot of people just tend to have very tight shoulders, and your neck as well. Because that's kind of how you're turning, and we don't spend a whole lot of time stretching those things. If you can stand next to something like a wall, a corner of a wall or something, and you turn and put your arm on it and kind of turn the torso as much as possible, I think those are the best, just to get loosened up a little bit and get into positions that you normally wouldn't be in. If you've got a desktop job sitting there with tight shoulders.
Yeah, I do one that I really like is I call it just the doorway stretch, where you both have both your arms behind you, and it really opens up your shoulders because I think we all have a tendency to, even if we have great posture, we all slouch our shoulders forward a little bit. And yeah, you're right. That's a big part of the golf swing. So what is one of the high points for you as a golfer yourself, or maybe as an instructor too? I guess you could answer that both ways. I know you already touched on a little bit about as far as an instructor, so maybe more so as a golfer yourself. Do you have some high points?
Yeah, I would say there's probably two events that were high points for me, and both of them were kind of overshadowed by someone else. So I won an event in 2013 in Wichita, where it was a pro-am, and I shot 67. And so if anyone's not familiar with a pro-am, it's basically a pro is going to take a group of amateurs to go play an event. And so in the tournament, there's a tournament among the pros for just a low score, and then there's a tournament among the teams. So the pro, in that case, I think it was 3 amateurs, make up one team, and you kind of do a best shot, or a best ball, I guess it was. So I shot 67 and won the pros, and then our team won as well. But the main reason we won was because we had an 18 handicapper, and it was a legit 18 handicapper. Everyone to this day says that he was a sandbagger, but I had played with him multiple times before and after, and he'd never done this before. But he was an 18 handicapper who shot 72, which by like the USGA statistics that's like getting struck by lightning 10 times in the same day, right? It just does not happen. And so the whole day I was realizing that I was just competing with him. I didn't want to get beat by an 18 handicapper. And so I think that's what helped me shoot 67, because I was like, there's no way. And I was just, up until the end, felt like he was going to get me. So I thought that round was actually more impressive than mine. And then the other one, I actually got third in an event. It was 36 holes in one day, and I shot 71-66. But then again, the guy whose scorecard I kept track of, he shot 64-60. So he smoked me. And he at the time was playing on like I don't know if it was the Hooters tour or the Nike tour or whatever at the time. He hit a 20-footer on the last hole for 59, and he left it about 3 feet short. And, I was trying, it's kind of like a pitcher pitching a perfect game. I didn't want to tell him, do you realize this is for 59? So those were the two most impressive rounds I've ever experienced or witnessed firsthand. And they both overshadowed my career highlights, I guess you could say.
Funny. I'm sure that you got a lot of grief for that guy shooting 72 with an 18 handicap.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what about on the other end of the spectrum? Maybe, I don't know if you'd call them low points, but maybe just biggest challenges to get to where you are now.
Yeah, so I would say just early in my career, giving really bad advice and giving really bad lessons. Sometimes, the learning curve to being a good instructor is slow. You got to learn from other people. You got to try some things, see if it works or not. I've been teaching now for 17 years, so I've given a lot of lessons, and I can look back at some that I gave early in my career and am just like, what was I thinking? That's terrible advice, or I made someone worse, or whatever it is. So that's maybe the lowest point, is kind of embarrassed at some of the lessons I gave early in my career.
Well, you look too young to be teaching for 17 years already, but you're doing something right, I guess, right?
Yeah. And so just the other day, I figured out that I'd been teaching for 17 years, and that's just about exactly half of my life.
Wow.
So I'm 35. So
okay.
Right around there, I've been teaching half my life.
And I suppose you can be a really good golfer and not be a very good teacher too, right? It's not necessarily synonymous that just because you know how to do it on your own, you're going to know how to teach other people how to do it.
Yeah. I would say someone like Bubba Watson he's probably not the greatest instructor. I don't know for sure, but he's one of those guys who just figured out, he's never taken a lesson in his life. He just figured out how to hit a golf ball right. He probably can't tell someone how to do what he does. But yeah, you're right. I think early in my career, I did just tell people to do how I figured it out. And a lot of those things were not correct, but I made them work. And so now I think I try to focus more on what the correct way is to do it, what the statistics, what the data says, rather than, hey, this is how I do it. And, I do some things correct. I do some things wrong in my own game. So yeah, you're right.
I think a lot of people like to pull up videos of their favorite golfer and try to emulate them. Would be how, if someone's not going to do an official lesson with a pro, they might just hop on YouTube and try to, Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods or something like that. Probably the hottest golfer right now that comes to mind, I don't know if you'd want to try to emulate with Jon Rahm, because man, he's creates a lot of power, but it's a shorter swing, right? Or it's a quick swing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he's one of those guys who had a physical limitation. I don't know if you knew this, but he was born with a club foot, and for his younger years, he had limitations in what his backswing was able to do. And so that's what he created and came up with. I think right now he's able to do more, but it worked for him, so he stuck with it. And you're right. You wouldn't want to imitate that. Another top guy right now, Scotty Scheffler. You wouldn't want to imitate his footwork.
So what question should golfers be asking their instructor that maybe rarely or never really gets asked? Is there a question that they should come in with that maybe they don't ask?
I don't know if there's a question that the student should be asking the instructor. I think maybe just getting instructor who listens to you, and maybe one who's asking good questions of you, because it's the instructor's job to learn what your goals are, what you're struggling with, what your game is like, how much you practice, how much you're investing in reaching that goal, that sort of thing. As the student, I think if you have a conversation with a pro and they're not really interested in learning about your game, your goals, your struggles, that sort of stuff, then that might be one to avoid, that they may just, want to get their lesson done, teach what they're teaching and move on. So that would be something I would look for, is just how does it feel to talk with the instructor right away? And what are they communicating by that first interaction?
Yeah, it kind of reflects back on what we were just talking about. So it's maybe more on the instructor's side. Are they just teaching what they teach, like with their, structure, or are they trying to get to know you and learn your swing and adapt to that?
Right. Yeah. So that they're making it personal to you, and they're not just trying to teach a cookie cutter swing. That's more like the YouTube approach. Now, I do put some instruction on YouTube. I think there's value in that, but you want to get an instructor who teaches to your game, not just forces you to conform to their game.
This is Lauren again, and we are going to have to put a pin in this conversation. This one got a bit longer than some of our past episodes, but I hope you enjoyed it and can put Eric's advice to good use on the golf course. In 2 weeks, we will be back for the conclusion of our conversation where we switch gears with some quick-hitting listener questions. So, if you are someone who submitted a question ahead of time for Eric, listen in to the next one to hear your questions answered. And I know this episode was all about golf, but if you'd like a quick review of your retirement planning, find the link in the show notes that says share more and get in touch. This will direct you to a questionnaire where you will find 8 multiple choice questions about retirement issues you may be facing. Ultimately, this helps us put together a 1-page color-coordinated report that we call your retirement risks analysis. This gives you a quick grade on all 14 of the largest retirement risks, and it's yours to keep whether we work together or not. As always, find past episodes at healthywealthywiseretirement.com and come back in 2 weeks for part 2 of my conversation with Eric. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, we would love if you took a quick moment to leave an honest review. Of course, we're shooting for 5 stars, but if you have suggestions to improve the show, we would love to hear from you too. Just click on the podcast name, Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise Retirement Podcast, and scroll down to ratings and review. Thanks again for your support, as this helps us reach a wider audience and help even more retirees just like you. This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Lauren Sherman is a certified financial planner and co-owner of Integrity Wealth Management, an investment advisor serving retirees in search of their own healthy, wealthy, and wise retirement lifestyle.